Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have Matt Douglas. Matt is a teen and young adult mentor and college consultant. So we're going to be talking about the older side of the spectrum here. Matt, welcome.
Hi, how are you? It's good to talk to you again.
It's so good to see you.
Yeah.
So catch us up on kind of who you are and what you're doing for the college age kiddos who are not really kiddos.
Yeah, well, we all are at heart sometimes. So what the work that I do mainly is I consider myself an educator in a pretty broad sense. And so the work that I've been specializing in the past number of years has been middle school, high school, and into college age students who are looking for mentorship and or academic counseling, essentially. And so a lot of that work is coaching through school and through life, kind of as in a mentorship role. And more, it's working with them on the college search and application process. Um, yeah,
And we know that, well, I know, having raised two teenagers who have been accepted into college.
congratulations.
Yeah, right. Well, I farmed it out because this is a very fraught process. And
Yeah,
particularly if your child has any kind of diagnosis, if there's an ADHD, autism, anxiety,
yeah,
2E,
yeah.
any learning profile challenge, college applications, number one, are daunting anyway. Number two, are going to be that much more complex. Do you want to talk a little bit about how how are college applications maybe a little bit different for kids with learning challenges?
Yeah, no problem. So there's a lot I can go into with this, and I'll stick to just your question for the moment. So the applications themselves, yeah, there's a lot. There is a huge process to this, and it never really sounds simple, and then you're doing it, and it's absolutely not simple. Once you are applying to a school, there's all the pieces to the puzzle. There's the essays, there's putting in all your information into the Common App, which sounds easy, but it can be a lot. There's including all your activities, which again can sound easy, but often isn't. There is getting college. There's getting teacher recommendations from teachers. So there is just a very, very long checklist of things to do. And what I find with many of the students that I work with on that part of the process, especially ones with ADHD or executive functioning challenges, or just they're busy, um, it can really pile up and feel overwhelming or daunting if there's not a system in place to get it done in like a timely or organized manner. And that's a lot of what I'm working with these students on during
Okay,
that point.
is those systems, because we
Yeah.
do know, and actually I'd like for you to talk about this a little bit because it always bears repeating. Anyone with the diagnoses that I mentioned earlier, so autism, anxiety, ADHD, I call those the big A's, but there are other ones, they all come with executive dysfunction.
Yeah.
And so can you just, again, because it bears repeating, what are executive function skills? Why do they matter? Why do we care about them as regards college in particular?
So I think these skills matter now more than ever in a lot of ways. And you see that there's sort of this new term of tutors and coaches out there called executive functioning coaches, and where this is really what they do. And it's part of what I do and have been doing for a while. Basically, whether you are let's call it a neurotypical student or a neurodiverse student, there are going to be challenges regarding these sort of executive functioning systems. Typically, those who are neurodiverse or have just more going on in their life, or maybe they have anxiety, for example, this can be more challenging. So, some examples of executive functioning would be time management, planning, organization. And then when you mix those types of things into a school setting or some sort of work environment, you add things like study skills, you add things like planning with a calendar or a planner of some kind, note taking, all these pieces to the puzzle that are really important as you progress through school for most students, and very important, for example, like we're talking about with college applications. And these skills are only more necessary when a student gets into college, because for most students, college is the most independent time of their life. And if they don't have these skills, it's very easy to falter.
Yeah. And college is also a time, this phase of adulthood, whatever it is, I don't really even know, is super fraught because
Yeah.
parents, by and large, are used to doing with, doing for, figuring out together with their students.
Mm-hmm.
And college is a time, and the application process is this bridge, I think, where that's no longer the case. Like nobody at a university wants to talk to a parent. It's basically not allowed.
Correct.
And so it creates this friction that I imagine you kind of see from where you sit. Do you have some advice for parents, or do you have like a spiel that
I
you
don't know where
kind
to
of,
start.
right?
But so the answer is absolutely I have advice. And so if you're a parent listening to this, or even if you're a student and college is on the horizon, I'll kind of give you my short and spiel, and we can go into more if you want. But basically, the first and most important step, I would argue, is as you are searching for whatever that post high school thing is going to be, whether it's college or something else, a gap year, work, who knows, right? But as you're searching for that, you need to be honest with yourself, or your child or student that you're working with, about what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and where the right place for them is at that point in their life. So once you have established that, it's far easier to choose the right place, and the student's much more likely to be successful. Okay. Having said that, if you haven't done that, or if there's still challenges on the horizon, there are a lot of things that parents really need to know, and so do students, about what they can do as a college student, especially as a first semester freshman, to get ready. That first semester freshman year is usually when students falter the most, and I've worked with many of them. So the first is understanding how accommodations work in college. So most students who are neurodiverse probably have some kind of IEP or 504 or some sort of accommodations at school. If that is the case, they want to make sure that they are going into the accommodations office at that school as early as possible, explaining their situation and getting whatever accommodations might be necessary. That is huge. Yes, go ahead.
And if you're a parent listening to this, your student is the person who has to do that,
Correct.
right? And
Yeah.
so I want to back this up, talking about executive function skills. I want to back this up to middle school and high school, where student might be participating in their educational plan meetings, where they are going to be doing some of this alongside of you, of course. But to my mind, sort of advocating for yourself, getting accommodations, advocating for your needs, teaching a child / young adult to do that is hugely important. It's in the realm of like, everybody should know how to do their own laundry. Honestly, it's like that important.
It's a really, really important thing. We could spend the entire hour just talking about that. And I'll just simply say this, and then we can go on. But what I would say is that you're absolutely right. And it's about empowerment, and it's about a student, a child, learning to advocate for themselves, and slowly a parent getting those training wheels off. That can be hard. It can be frustrating. It can be anxiety provoking. Trust me, I know. But like, you have to be able to let your student or child start to do those things, so that when they are in that situation, college, for example, where it's just them, they have at least some of the skills to proceed.
And this is where I'll jump in as the parent coach, because I coach parents on this all the time, right? Which is like, I'm worried about my child and their college applications. I'm worried about my child's performance at college. That worry belongs to you, the parent. It doesn't belong to your child. And so like, there's all this kind of mental gyration that happens. I'm finding, both as I experience it myself, but also as I coach parents of this age kid, where it's a lot of work emotionally to separate from one's child in this way when you have been so used to it. And it's been your job for X number of years to clean up the mess and to see the obstacles and to deal with them. It's really challenging. And so I don't want to minimize it, but I also want to put it squarely in the laps of of ourselves as parents, right? There's stuff that
Yeah.
we own, and there's stuff we got to teach our kids to own. So I just wanted to jump in there with
Yeah,
that.
and so when I first went on my own years ago as a coach and mentor, essentially, my driving goal, and this is on my website to this day, is my goal is I am looking to have the kids, teens, students, whatever that I'm working with be on their way to becoming independent, self-sufficient adults. That is the goal. At the end of the day, that's what I'm working towards. And so if I could give any advice to a parent, it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day in the moment of this quiz, this test, this homework, this grade, this college application, whatever it is, and then lose sight of the bigger picture, which is you want your child to eventually be a happy, healthy, self-sufficient adult. Those two things can be in conflict, the short term and the long term, but the long term is really, really, really important.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this process. We have college coming up. We have whatever we have here. And we started to talk about sort of how college is different from secondary education. Again, they're on their own and all of this stuff. So what are like, I want to give parents like inflection points or like times when we want to be paying attention.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, real quick before I do that, let me just finish my thought from a couple minutes ago about college. So what I was talking about was find the right environment for that student, college, what type of college, or maybe a different type of program. When they are at a college, if they have accommodations, being able to get those. And then the other things that are really important and that can be used, tutors, executive functioning coaches, people in that student's corner who can help guide that student through those difficult times. Usually it's the first semester a year. Those are kind of the three. There's a lot more you can do, obviously. Those are kind of the three things I just wanted to make apparent. Finding the right situation, looking into accommodations or other help at the school if they're there or when they're there, and then getting other support, for example, tutors or executive functioning coaches. So having said that, inflection points. What do you mean exactly? Inflection points
Well,
towards the college process?
yeah, I think towards the college process, particularly, what are like things we need to know? Are there times of the high school experience when we really want to be paying attention? What's
Yeah.
I don't know, give me a lay of the land here.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So I have a book coming out. It should be out when this podcast is released. It basically is a workbook called Unlocking College Admissions that walks students, families, professionals, whoever, through the college search and application process as if I were talking to them, except it's a $18 book instead of $7,000, whatever gets charged nowadays by some of these companies. So that book outlines a lot of this, and I'll kind of give some of the points right now. So freshmen and so for every student is different. Every family's different situation, but in general, freshman and sophomore year is about doing your best as a student, trying to find your way through high school, trying to figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are, and maybe some of your interests, whether they're subjects in school, extracurriculars, or other sorts of things. The inflection points then come, I would argue, in freshman and then junior and then senior year. So junior year for most students is the most academically rigorous and demanding. You're usually taking the hardest level classes, whether they're honors or APs or whatever. College is right around the corner, and that's just sort of in the background of most people's minds. And you look on social media, or you talk to your friends or your teachers, and like that's just part of the conversation. So junior year is a big inflection point. I would say the first one, where school often gets more difficult, and the long-term demands, whether they're consciously or unconsciously recognized, are there. And I work with a lot of students who start to get really stressed out as they go through junior year because of the workload, but also because of this sort of like nagging idea in the back of their head that, oh my God, like high school's ending. Like, now what? What do I do? All the excitement and anxiety that goes along with it. And then the other inflection point, I would argue, is basically during senior year, especially towards the beginning, as you are still taking your high school classes and then finally now applying to these schools. And it's a really weird process for a lot of students because you're sort of in this in-between period of being a high school student and graduating in college, and you're applying, and it can be strange. So those are the two big ones, I would argue.
And I think if you've got any kind of neurodivergent situation happening where you don't, for kids, for people who do not have a very strong plan B, or they don't have a real strong kind of projection skill where they cannot project, they have a hard time projecting themselves into the future and imagining, I'm going to be fine, or college is going to be a little bit like high school in this regard and a little bit different in this other regard. For those kids, I hear you in this, like, oh my God, I don't know what it's going to be like. This is really hard. What if the next thing's really hard? I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah.
And can you speak to a little bit, like, I don't know if burnout is the right word, but like, talk about timing, talk about, for kids for whom this transition is challenging, like, what do we do there? I think here's the question everybody wants to know. How do I know if it's okay to push my kid into the college application process, or whether they should be taking a gap year, taking time off and applying later? Like, everybody gets so hung up on the timeline.
Yeah.
Talk to the timeline.
Yeah, happily. So I guess I'll start by saying, if you're listening and you are feeling any version of this, you are not alone. And so it's okay. And so it is really, really common. And the good thing about where things are in this day and age with college and post high school is that there's a lot of flexibility, more flexibility than I think people realize. And so one of the first things that I say to students in this situation is what I just said, which is, it's okay, you're not alone. And then the second thing I say is basically these sets of things. So if you are not sure what you want to do, that is okay. There's a student that I'm working with right now where that's basically the conversation. And he's pretty sure he wants to take a gap year. That's fine. So part of what we've been working on is the different options for that gap year: internships, jobs, say taking some classes at a community college, for example, those sorts of things. But also the option of being able to go to college. And so what almost every college in the country allows you to do is, if you apply to a college, November of your senior year, and you get in, you can defer for a year, which basically allows you to take that gap year and then go to college a year later. So it gives students this sort of bigger window of to decide what their plan is. Most college applications are due between October or November and January, February. And almost every college doesn't require you to tell them if you're going or not until May 1st. So for most students, there's this really nice period of many months. You're getting your college acceptances back anywhere as early as December and as late as March-ish. So you have at least a few months before May 1st to figure it out. So, okay, great. You got 4 acceptances in hand. Awesome. Do you want to go to one of those schools, or do you want to wait a year? So that sort of thing, I think, is helpful for families to hear who are like, we just don't know. And that's my answer is that's okay.
I love the way that you are phrasing this, because I think that many people think, oh my God, I only have 2 months. Oh my God, I only have this amount of time. And the way you've just phrased it is so expansive and so relaxed, really.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot to be gained from having that approach of like, yeah, I've got 4 college acceptances in hand, or I'm still waiting for some, or I've got a wait list, or a waitlist spot in hand, and I still have this amount of time before I have to decide.
Yeah.
It's a really lovely way to put it. So I just wanted to flag
Well,
that.
that's how I talk about it, so I'm glad.
Yeah. No, listen, all of this kind of fake deadlines, there are real deadlines, but also, like, college is going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
The process is what the process is. And I, for one, have seen what I consider to be too many, which, is probably anybody who's doing it, who's really pushing on a particular schedule.
Yeah.
Because that's the schedule, not with like any kind of real rationale in mind. When we're talking about like mental health issues, academic issues, kind of school refusal, that kind of thing. I mean, that's more on the maybe extreme side of the scale, but there's enough of them where, like, is college the right thing? Is this time frame the right time frame? I mean, I love what you said earlier about, like, let's be honest about, like, what are we dealing with here?
Yeah, that's the first thing the book talks about. It's is college right? And I think for many people that should not be a foregone conclusion. I think that it should really, really be considered. And the other thing I'll say about flexibility, and this might give some students and parents listening some peace of mind as well. Besides the ability to defer for a year or take a gap year or do different programs. It is so common nowadays to change your major, often multiple times, to switch colleges a year or two in if you want to. Like, this is all okay. And so there's a lot of students. My brother is one, for example, people that I work with, they go to school for a year, they say this isn't for me, and they switch. That's fine. Or they do community college and then go on. That's fine. Or they change their major 3 times. Let's not do it too much, but like 3 times, fine. It's fine. The goal should be, I think, to graduate high school with some sort of an idea of who you are and what you think you want to do, and some sort of plan to get there. And that plan can change, and that is okay. But as long as you're working towards it in some way, then I think you're doing the right thing.
And working towards it might be, I'm not doing anything right now because I've really got to focus on this other thing, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I just want to really normalize that for folks who are like, I got to step off this hamster wheel completely and I'll get back when I get
Definitely
back.
okay as well. It'll still be there. Take your breaks. Gosh, that
Yeah.
is so important. Oh my goodness.
Well, and it's so interesting to me that like, and it makes sense to me because, secondary school, right? Start in kindergarten, you go through 12th grade, it's automatic nowadays.
Hmm.
And we've kind of built college into this automatic process,
Yeah.
and it maybe shouldn't be automatic.
I agree
Probably
with you.
not.
I definitely agree with you on that. I think that there are so many options and so different nowadays. And when you're in a system that takes you from K through 12, that's all pretty much, it's kind of cookie cutter a little bit. And then you go off to something brand new with new people and a new location and new expectations. It's not the same. It's not. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that should be recognized a bit more as well. I agree.
So, if folks want to learn more about you, Matt, and your book, because it's got like a step-by-step kind of situation happening, right? It's a workbook.
Hmm. Yep.
What do people do? Where do they go? How do they find you?
Well, you can get it on Amazon. The book is called Unlocking College Admissions, your step-by-step workbook for finding the right college and getting in. I put everything in the title, so it's pretty clear what it is, I think. I also have a website, unlockingcollegeadmissions.com. That website has free excerpts from the book. And if you'd like to take a look at it, there's ways to get discounts on that website as well. But yeah, there's a lot there. There should be a preview, at least a little bit on Amazon to see some of the pages there, as well as what's on the website. So yeah, if you're interested at all, if you're a parent of a high school student, if you're a professional working with them, or just a student yourself who wants to sort of take advantage of what's there, take a look. I think it'll be really, really helpful. I designed it with you in mind, in all seriousness. So I really hope it's helpful for those who get to use it.
I love it. And we will link to that in the show notes. Matt Douglas, thank you for being here today. This was fun.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.